in today. Big day yesterday across the Twin Cities as the Wolves finally made a hiring for the president of basketball operations, Gersson Rosas, coming over from Houston, going to be running the Wolves as the president here. Judd, what's your initial reactions?
Well, I could sit here and say it's a great hire, and I think the Wolves are finally joining the common day.
Say it, do it. That's what you want to do.
I've come to a conclusion about that question.
What is it?
And it's very much the answer that I gave from the first 2 days of the Vikings draft, and that is, I like what they did.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea if it's going to work.
Sure.
Like the Vikings going offense with their first 4 picks, I think is smart. Now they forced their hand and made some dumb decisions along the way to have to do that, but at least they did that, right?
Yeah.
Gersson Rosas seems to me like, when you look at what he's done, 18 years in Houston with
16.
16 years, very progressive team, all of those things. I like the fact that it appears the Wolves have taken the right step.
Wow, that's
But but we don't know.
Yeah,
we don't know.
They've taken the right step, and they had a much smoother process, it seems, than they have in the past. In past searches, they relied on a search firm. They've had to ask David Stern, the former NBA commissioner, for a recommendation, and that turned into David Kahn.
Yeah, and Glenn was sick at that time, and that was awful.
Yeah, so they went about it the right way, and it seems like they talked to some really smart candidates, and it seems like they hired a really smart candidate. We'll see, and time will tell. In 3 years, someone could be watching this back, and we could look like idiots, and it could be a massive failure, right?
What's your take on Ethan Casson, who's the president of the team, but he's more of the business guy, but it sounds like he had a huge role here.
Yeah.
I know that he started with the Wolves as sort of a lackey type of guy. He left the team, he came back. What's your take on him? Because I do think that he's sort of the key guy here as far as the unknown factor who got involved, who, as you just said, was involved with Khan, was not involved with Tibbs. From covering this team, do you think he's sharp? Because if he's sharp, at least that gives me cause to say, okay, it makes more sense.
I do think he's sharp. I think that he came in right after they hired Thibodeau. So like you said, he didn't have any part in that hiring process. But he was definitely a part of the firing process of Thibodeau. He was one of the guys that was in the room when they let him go in January. And he was a big part of this interview process. And for him to come up with a list of candidates that were really smart, there were 5 candidates. Obviously, Michael Winger of the Clippers declined the opportunity to be interviewed and stayed in L.A.
Was that I know that I'm going to be stuck with Ryan Saunders as coach. I don't want to talk to you unless I can bring in my coach. Was that
initially? I thought that might be the case, and that would have made sense. But it's also worth noting that Trent Redden, who is the assistant general manager, so he is Winger's assistant out in L.A., he talked to the New Orleans Pelicans and David Griffin, who they hired to run their franchise. He talked to them about an executive position there. He worked in Cleveland with David Griffin when Griffin was the general manager of the Cavs from 2014 until 2017. And Redden didn't want to leave either. A lot of these guys with the Clippers want to stay with that organization because they really truly feel that they're building something special, and that really great days are ahead for that franchise. So initially I thought maybe this isn't the right situation, maybe this doesn't make sense, but to see someone else that could have had much more power in another place than they have with the Clippers choose to stay with the Clippers, I think that makes sense. It makes this feel better. And you also have to wonder, how much of a pay raise did he get to stay? What did Steve Ballmer dole out to keep them?
Here's my question, too.
That's something that we don't know.
My question off of that is it used to be in sports, if you were a second-in-command guy, you eventually got a chance, and you were going to leave. How much do you think, though, the teams now pay guys to stay, not just based on the fact that they're good, but based on the fact that they have inside knowledge of that team that they are then going to take to a team, and in the Rockets' case, in the conference? The Rosas thing really intrigues me because that's 16 years of knowledge, and as we know now, teams do not tell you anything. Like, it's not like, well, the Clippers know the same thing as the Wolves, who know the same thing as the Knicks, who know the same thing as the Sixers. So I am intrigued by the fact that Rosas is going to get up and leave Houston and come to a conference rival with a ton of inherent information that he is going to use for sure, that my guess is the Wolves simply didn't know until the day Rosas walks into the door at Target Center.
I think that it all depends on what the opportunity to move up internally is. Rosas couldn't go any higher internally with the Rockets. And Daryl Morey, their general manager, he wasn't going anywhere. He just got a contract extension. He's going to be with the Rockets for a long time. He's already been there for a long time, and I can't see that ending anytime soon. So when that's the case, I feel as if you really don't try and prevent someone from advancing their career.
Oh, you wouldn't.
I'm
just saying I'd be concerned because he's now taking 16 years of information that they generated and worked hard to do to the Wolves.
You can be concerned, sure, but also I think that they have to trust that this Daryl Morey guy has it figured out too.
Absolutely.
So of course Rosas is going to know a lot about the Houston Rockets, but your guess is, if you're the Rockets, that Daryl Morey knows more, and he knows everything that Rosas knows too. So I think that that's where that comes into play as well. But you never want to prevent someone from advancing their career, so that's why I think the Rockets are. It's a bittersweet thing for them to see him walk out that door, because internally they're probably happy that he's finally getting the opportunity to run his own franchise. But I think they also feel as if they're losing a really smart guy that they've had around for quite some time that's led them to a lot of success.
You don't want to stop him, but you might say, as he walks out your door, you might say, you really want to go to the Timberwolves?
You could do that.
Have you seen that team?
There are only 30 of these jobs in the world, and that's the thing. It's not you really want to go to the Timberwolves. It's you get to run your own team, and there are only 30 people in the world that get to say that about an NBA team.
Okay, if you want to go to the Timberwolves, Danny, that's fine.
What's the number one thing you need Rosas? You need to see Rosas do initially.
Oh, this is going to be slow. Like this is not going to be a fix for 2019-20.
Sure.
The number one thing that I would just like to see him do is I'm not even going to tell you exactly what those are, because as a non-basketball guy, I like the sport, but I don't know it as well as you do, certainly. I probably don't even know what I'm looking for right now, but I'll know it when I see it. It's Twins-like.
Sure.
Like, look at all the things. Baseball has, as we've talked about 1,000 times, has changed huge. And I didn't even know what I was looking for Falvey to do, but you knew that it had to be different, and it has been.
Yeah.
So basically, for lack of a better term, I guess I'm looking for him to modernize a franchise. And that was the one thing, Tibbs was old school. Like with Tibbs, there was no, I'm bringing all these ideas and I'm going to bring you into, at that time, 2016, 17. So I'm looking for them to bring ideas that right now I'm probably not even thinking about. But when you start to see them, you'll be like, oh, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And I don't think it's a thing where they're going to initially look like the Houston Rockets. And we all know that Houston just bombs away from three, and they look unlike any other NBA team with the system that they run. But I do think that it's fair to expect this team to now have a system that's built for the roster that they have, because that's not how it had been previously.
And that roster's going to change, right?
Yes.
It's built around Cat, but it's going to have to change.
Yes. Carl's going to continue to be the centerpiece, and you're going to see other guys come in and out. But I think that it's going to be a very fluid situation roster-wise.
What is going to be, one last thing on this.
Sure.
What in your mind is going to be, because he probably can't be traded as much as we would like him to be traded, Andrew Wiggins' ideal role when Rosas and probably Ryan sit down and discuss it? Off the bench, do you think? What's going to be, because that's got to be the one thing that Rosas told Glenn Taylor and Ethan Casson, that I at least have to have control here.
Sure.
And we all know now that a president of basketball operations, his control extends to probably what goes on the court on game day. What do you think, ideally, opening night next year, is Andrew Wiggins doing for this club, assuming he is here?
I think he still is a starter. I don't think that changes. But I also think that we're going to see his offensive role change a little bit. The one area of the floor where he was actually an above-average player is in shooting corner three-pointers. I think we see more of that from him. I think we see him below the elbows more often than we have previously. And on that left side of the floor, where that's the one place he really does thrive. There are a lot of areas on the floor where he's just not good at basketball, but that left baseline, he's actually a really good basketball player. Okay. So I think that you could see him there much more often than we previously had. You just need to get him and the rest of the team to buy into their new roles, whichever they are.
So basically, you're going to have to get him to buy into saying your freedom as a player is sort of gone here. Here's exactly what we need you to do, and not outside that scope.
You need to give him a more defined role that he can follow on a nightly basis, and you need him to buy in. I think everyone's roles are going to be more defined than they have been in the past in Minnesota, but for that to work, they have to buy into it, and that's what matters the most. If they don't buy into it, it's not going to work. It's going to be a failure. All right, move on to the Twins. They got a big win from the Astros last night. They've taken 2 of 3 in this 4-game set.
Right.
Game 4 coming your way at noon today. Jonathan Scope's home run last night. What's the last home run you saw that was that far? I mean, this was a mammoth blast, third deck at Target Field, just absolutely crushed it, no doubt about it.
I saw one a couple years ago. This is probably more than a couple, about 4 years ago. I want to say was it in his prime. It might have been Ryan Braun, I think. I think it was Braun at Target Field. Hit one that basically went by the foul pole and kept going. And there's a little bit of a gap there, and I don't know where it stopped. That was a shot. Probably the longest home run I've seen in watching the Twins. I started watching the Twins in '78. Was against the Twins, no surprise. Mark McGwire with the A's, no surprise.
Mark McGwire has one of the longest ones I've ever seen against the Indians when he hit the scoreboard at then Jacobs Field.
I want to say that this was a Sunday night game, if I'm right, at the Metrodome in the 90s. And McGwire hit a shot to left field that it was impossible to reach the upper deck, but it went like halfway up, which was a mammoth shot.
They don't make home runs like they used to.
Yeah, but that's interesting because we see a ridiculous amount of them now. But yeah, do they not make them?
But how many 500-foot home runs do we see in baseball? Because we used to see.
Oh, okay. But here's why. I know the answer to this.
Why is that?
It's because the people doing the measurements now are more accurate. We used to.
And less fun.
Well, they are. No, you're right. You're right. But at Met Stadium in Bloomington and the Metrodome, they had a piece of paper basically that had distance estimates, and so they'd be like, that was 490 feet. They didn't know. The biggest joke in Metrodome history, and there's a lot of jokes there, but the biggest joke is that there was a home run by Ben Ogilvy of the Brewers shortly after the stadium opened up when the Brewers were still in the American League that went into the second deck, and it was a shot. But I think to the Metrodome's dying day, that was because of the distance estimate, the longest home run in Metrodome history. There's no way. So I do think that we see just as many home runs that go just as far now, but you're right. The no fun police are the fact that computers mean that they get accurate measurements. Now, the interesting thing was StatCast on the Scope home run had it longer, I think. Right?
No, I think StatCast had it a little bit shorter.
Oh, it did. Okay, because StatCast was different. But anyway, I do think home runs are just as prolific and just as far as they used to be. But now our measurements are more accurate, and that's not as much fun because the original measurement of a home run, if I'm not mistaken, was a game between the Yankees and Senators in the 50s. Mantle hit a home run that I believe left the stadium in Washington.
What do you mean you believe? Weren't you there?
And I should have been. I wish I had been. And it rolled and rolled and rolled, and the legend was that they had a guy get out the old school tape measure deal and actually walk the thing off. So home runs used to be more fun as far as we just took a wild guess and said, that thing was 590.
Yeah, I missed the 500 plus.
I'm with
runs.
you totally.
I exaggerate the number. What do I care?
I wanted Scopes to be like, that was 595. You know what? I don't care. It's more fun.
Exactly. Lie a little bit. Who cares? Who needs facts?
Well, especially for home runs on measurements, it's unnecessary.
I agree with you.
Give me theater of the mind. That's what I want.
Is this Twins team for real?
Yeah, I mean, the division's not that good.
No.
And the Twins, okay, what do we know about the Twins as we sit here on May 2nd, right? What do we know about this team? This team can hit.
Yes.
Like, they're going to hit. It's cold outside. They're going to hit more probably, not less. Will guys slump? Yes. But will guys right now who probably aren't hitting as well get hotter? Absolutely. I guess you could ask yourself a legitimate question about the starting pitching. I mean, Martin Perez and Odorizzi 2 nights ago were fantastic.
Yeah.
Does that continue? I have no idea. The bullpen, there are components of the bullpen I like, but there's lots of things that scare me still. I would try, if I was Falvey and Levine, to bolster the bullpen. But I think when you look at Cleveland, which Kluber got hurt last night, it's out, what now, 4 to 6 weeks at least?
I haven't seen a timetable, but he broke a bone in his elbow.
Clevenger's been hurt. Behind Cleveland, Kansas City, Detroit, Chicago. The Twins are absolutely for real, if nothing else, because of the division too, Danny.
I will say this, Detroit and Chicago aren't quite as bad as I expected them to be. I thought they were going to be closer to Kansas City instead of closer to Cleveland and Minnesota.
The White Sox don't surprise me there. The Tigers do, and I expect something to give there. Don't you? I think Detroit's bad.
Sure, I do too, but the record is what it is, and they're close to 500 right now, and that's not something I expected in
But
the
don't
month
you
of
think
May.
the Twins are... for real, do I see them as a World Series team? No. But do I see them as a potential playoff team? Yeah.
I'm curious if they're writing a thank you card to the Indians for letting them enjoy winning the division. Really, really curious if that's going
your
on
club.
right now.
That's your club. You know, that's
They're
really
a mess. All right,
They
last thing I want to get to today, a new thing on Cluster Fun, show and tell. Judd, you brought in something that you want to show to our audience. Yeah. What is it?
Thank you. This is an idea because we've all got stuff, right?
You've got
at home.
You probably
our
have
guy
more.
Seth behind the camera told me he's got Kevin Love's.
He's got Kevin Love game worn shoes,
awesome
a Mike
stuff.
Trout broken bat.
But I've got stuff lying around on my floor in my basement. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? This stuff's cool. We should do something with it. So here's my first one: show and tell. Do you know who this is, Danny Cunningham? Do you know who that is?
That is Bobby Orr.
That a very good way to go, dude.
Put me on the hockey podcast, you coward.
Robert Gordon Orr. No, because you don't care about the Wild. Robert Gordon Orr.
It's not a Wild podcast.
The original offensive defenseman. Now Doug Harvey of Montreal was sort of that guy, but this is the guy.
Doug Harvey, man.
This is the guy.
Check your play.
You know, we talk now about Brent Burns does this, and before, you know, Paul Coffey. Robert Gordon Orr, Bobby Orr, one of the greatest defensemen of all time, absolutely dominant. Scored one of the most famous goals in OT in the Stanley Cup Finals to beat the Blues, where he's flying through the air.
Great
picture. This is my first show and tell, and this is going to go up. If you guys can see it, if I place this, I don't know. Seth, can they still see this? All right, I'm going to put it right here.
What's the inscription on the picture say?
You know, that's a good question. I honestly think that we got this at a garage sale. I think my mom found this for me years and years ago, my late mother. I can't read it. And it might be signed by him. But I'm going to put it right here, Bobby Orr. So I say from now on this show, we start a show and tell. So
that's fine with me.
You bring something, I'll bring something new next time. Seth, Manny, Declan, if you got something from that's old from 2012 or something, you'd go do that. Show and tell, boys.
Well, I think show and tell is a success. I think Cluster Fun's been a success. Judd, thanks for doing this today.
Yeah,
we'll be
great.
back tomorrow at 11 a.m. on Score North. You can find us on Twitter, Periscope, Twitch, videos later on YouTube after. Be sure to tune in. Until tomorrow at 11, I'm Danny Cunningham.